and stuff. So it was a lot of kind of storytelling with friends around campfires. I think that was the essence of growing up in that kind of world.
Welcome to Not in a Huff with Jackson Huff, where we interview newsmakers, storytellers, and all-around interesting people. Sit back, relax, unless you're driving, and enjoy the show. Here's Jackson.
Hello. I am Jackson Huff. This is Not in a Huff. Thanks so much for joining me. As always, really appreciate it. This week's speaking with Chris Erasmus. Now, Chris is another up-and-coming musical artist. I've talked to several in the past. It does seem like I get sent a lot of country artists, and this one is no different when it comes to the world of country, but very different when it comes to where he got his start. Chris is originally from Zimbabwe, a place not necessarily known for its country music, but it's a place that has a budding country scene, a budding music scene as a whole. We're going to talk about what it was like growing up in Zimbabwe. We're going to talk about how he got into music in Africa, somewhere very different than a lot of people get into country music anyways. We'll talk about kind of being classically trained. He was in quite a few big shows. I would say Broadway shows, but I believe they were mostly in the West End and in London. We're going to talk about kind of how that shaped him. We're going to talk about some of his music and how he writes the music and how he records it and just all that kind of stuff. I really think you're going to enjoy this one. It's a unique perspective on country music. I talked to someone in the past who was from Australia that was breaking into country music, and of course, there's a few people that have done just that. Like Keith Urban, obviously, is a big person from Australia. We're actually going to talk about Keith Urban in this conversation. Apparently, he was actually born in New Zealand, but lived in Australia since he was a kid. So a Kiwi, but also an Aussie, and we set the record straight there. But yeah, I like I said, Australia. Yeah, that's a unique place, but Zimbabwe is certainly even more unique to have someone come and decide to do the country thing, and he's definitely done a lot with it. Coming to the United States and working on ranches and kind of being a nomad there. Really awesome conversation. I think you're going to enjoy this one. If this is your first time listening, you haven't already, go leave that 5-star rating on Apple and Spotify. Leave a written review on both. Really helps a ton. Follow along on Instagram, on TikTok, Not Enough Podcasts, Not Enough Jackson F on Facebook. Lots of places to follow along. You'll want to follow along with Chris as well. All of his information will be at the end of this interview and in the show notes. But here, without further ado, here is Chris Erasmus. Mr. Erasmus, how are you?
I'm good. Yourself?
I'm good. Yeah, just hardest question of the afternoon. Just introduce yourself.
I'm a singer-songwriter originally from Zimbabwe, but I'm based in London. I've been all over the world, Australia, out in Montana, done a season out there, lived in New York, worked out there. So yeah, been around a bit, and I'm just kind of writing music and performing it and seeing what I can get done.
I love it. Now I want to kind of start with kind of your growing up, just because I've talked to a lot of people in the music world. I've talked to quite a few people in the country space. I had someone on from Australia, which isn't necessarily the first place you think of with country, but Zimbabwe is certainly not the first place you think of. So talk a little bit about kind of that upbringing, and I guess more importantly, how did it lead you into country music?
Firstly, Australia's, when I was over there, there's some pretty amazing country artists who came out of there, so I'm really happy to see what's happening there. Zimbabwe, I grew up in a place called Victoria Falls, which is actually like a natural kind of wilderness area. So it'd be considered a reserve. My family did a lot of the wildlife conservation out there. So we did a lot of that. And then when we moved kind of down south into South Africa onto the farm. So I've been very much a farm boy and a country boy over the years, and I kind of grew up singing and listening to music, and then when I started writing music, I did the album and it came out, and everyone was like, "Oh yeah, this is country," the first few songs that came out. And yeah, I mean, my stories are country. They might be a little bit more unique to kind of what I know, but you know, I still have that country kind of boy in me, and a lot of the music just came out that way, and that's what pushed me into country. And I was lucky enough to kind of, you know, spend some time in Montana, and a lot of my friends out there kind of pointed me the right way when I was working out there. And yeah, so it's always been a kind of special place in my heart. And Zimbabwe, funny enough, actually has a lot of country playing. You got your Hank Williams, your kind of Johnny Cash's, your Willie Nelson. So there's a lot of country music played out there.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was going to ask you. Like, just, you know, in Zimbabwe, what does the music scene look like? Is there, I mean, is there places that you could perform? Is there country bars and stuff like that? What's the, I guess, what's the music scene look like in Zimbabwe?
There is no reliable professional music scene, unfortunately, but the performance would very much look like you kind of playing around a campfire. That's how we start. You got a guitar, you learn a few chords, your friend learns a few more, and you kind of hobble something together and sing. And, you know, early on, it was a lot of kind of, you know, singing at restaurants and stuff, and your Hank Williams, your Johnny Cash, your Willie Nelsons, you know, Mama Don't Let Your Baby Grow Up to Be Cowboys and all that stuff. Those are phrases that I grew up hearing, and people singing around campfires and stuff. So it was a lot of kind of storytelling with friends around campfires. I think that was the essence of growing up in that kind of world. And traditionally in Africa, a lot of especially the tribal customs and stuff, stories are told around a campfire at night. You know, there's not a lot else to do if you're not near television, and we didn't really have satellite connections or anything like that. So it was either VCR tape, which if we were very lucky, or sitting around a campfire telling stories about this and that.
Yeah. And we already kind of talked about Australia. And just like you said, there's quite a country music scene there. Obviously, I feel like everyone, and this is a very big generalization, but everyone from Australia that's in country maybe wants to be the next Keith Urban, because he's probably the biggest Australian country artist that there is. Maybe we won't say Zimbabwe, because that's narrowing it down pretty much. But is there some people in the world of country from Africa that people look up to in that, if they want to move into it? I don't know necessarily, but I'm also pretty naive.
No, fair enough. Is Keith an Aussie or a Kiwi? He might be a New Zealander, actually, Keith Urban.
I think he's Australian, but I could be wrong.
It's the same part of the world, but I know that that you got to get the sex kick getting Canada and United States. But yeah, Keith does some really good stuff, and really has pointed that guys at that part of the world in the right direction. And yeah, we've got guys. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call them country, but we've got a very, very strong music scene in South Africa, and we've got a very strong kind of up and comers that come through, and a great music kind of based in South Africa, where I ended up studying and spending a lot of my time doing music. You got guys like your Johnny Clegg, your Jaluka. So although they might be more kind of in the kind of African genre, there is a strong element of country kind of influence there and coming through. So there's a lot of really, really talented musicians coming out of South Africa. It's quite tricky to make the jump sometimes, but the talent is there. So like even now I'll go back and you got, you know, guys who are far superior to me in terms of ability and knowledge.
Yeah. Well, we're going to split the difference, because I'm told that the Keith Urban was born in New Zealand, so you're correct there. But as a young child, he moved to Australia, so he's got dual citizenship. So we'll split the difference.
Yeah, I needed to let the Kiwis kind of give the Kiwis a note of the hat, because those guys are pretty talented out there too.
For sure, I don't want to discount that at all.
And the rivalry between South Africa and the Zimbabwe, it's South Africa, the kind of rugby teams and the All Blacks. We got to kind of we always like to give him a bit of stick, but yeah, Keith's amazing. Keith, like the music that he does and the ability that he does it is kind of, it really is like groundbreaking, and he did it well before anyone else in terms of making the jump kind of to the States. So he's definitely like someone you'd look up to and really kind of think about in terms of like that country kind of, you know, star that everyone's kind of looking up to see how it was done, how it is done. I'm a big fan of guys like Foy Vance, who are kind of in the UK, are very good songwriters, and they play the Grand Ole Opry and does some cool stuff out there. So yeah, there's plenty. It's not as lucrative maybe as in the States, and the names don't always get the recognition they possibly deserve. But yeah, there are a lot of guys, and in Africa, like you're hustling a couple of jobs to make it work. But I've been lucky and kind of managed to, you know, hustle in different ways and find kind of different gigs to kind of work my way to Australia and then to London, and spend some time in New York. Montana. So you learn to hustle, but it's yeah. You also learn to be a country boy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I want to kind of talk about that, kind of the nomad life that you've had a little bit. We talked about Zimbabwe, obviously, but you left Zimbabwe, I think around 18 years old, and you were all over the place. You just mentioned some of it. Just talk a little bit more about that. It sounds like you were in Montana at one point. I think you're in London now. Talk a little bit about, I guess, kind of that globe trekking that you've done.
Oh, I've been pretty lucky, and Africa is always kind of going to have a special place in my heart. But if you want to be a performer, if you want to try different things, it's the money's just not there. The opportunities aren't there. People can't afford to spend a lot of money to go to gigs. That then you got to travel and find out kind of what's going to happen. So we had a tricky political situation in Zimbabwe with a man by the name of Robert Mugabe. So a lot of Zimbabweans went down to South Africa. We did a lot of our schooling out there. I went to school there and I studied classical music. And then started actually acting, and then went to Australia to study and kind of learn what I can from the Australians. I studied with an opera singer in Australia. Really kind of, following that, I did a lot of musical theater and I love voice training. I love the study of the voice, as well as, guitar and other musical instruments. And it's crazy that it all kind of led to country music. And then I got an opportunity to kind of work out in Montana, out near Red Lodge, which is a kind of small kind of town. And did a season out there, cowboying up there, which is pretty cool. I mean, who doesn't want to be a cowboy? So it was a cool opportunity to be a cowboy in America. I've cowboyed in my part of the world, but it more involves buffalo and doing some pretty dumb stuff on horses with lion and
Huh.
things that we probably shouldn't share too much of. But yeah, so it was that, and then London. I've got an Irish passport on my grandmother's side, so I came to London. I'd been doing visas and stuff for a while, and it gets quite expensive and quite tricky to kind of figure out how to work in different situations all the time, especially as an artist where you got to have like four jobs. Visas limit you to like certain jobs. You can't your scope of jobs. So I landed in London just before COVID, and kind of been honing my craft here. There's so much talent in Camden and the up and comers, and you've got these real geniuses out here, and London's got a real growing country scene, and there's a lot of talent coming out of here as well.
Let's kind of talk about your actual music and how it's created. Are you somebody who, are you kind of the singer songwriter where you create the entire thing? Do you work with people on these songs, or how is the music that you wind up singing created?
It's a big mix of everything. So the album we're working on at the moment is very collaborative. I've got a great producer who I'm working with. And some of the songs I write myself. I'll sit down and I'll sit on the piano, or I'll sit with the guitar and come up with a melody, and then kind of tell a story through that melody, or I'll start with the narrative. I kind of do both. And then recently with the album that we're currently doing, I love collaborating. I'm working with a lot of really cool artists, really cool producers, a couple of musical directors who are like specialized in kind of musical theater, so they come from a very heavy theory background. And I love doing that because it knocks you out of your patterns and your rhythms that you would sometimes fall into. I hate kind of writing 3 songs and looking to record 3 songs and they're all very, very similar. I don't particularly like that. I want to tell different stories, and each song that you get to record is such a privilege and opportunity to tell a story that if you don't really put a bit of effort into kind of really separating each story and being very specific about what you're trying to tell and what you're trying to convey, and the feel that you're trying to get, and the influences that you get, it's a pity. It's a missed opportunity. So I really look at kind of finding different influences and working with really interesting people who sometimes like I wrote with a guy who was very much like a rock writer, or a guy who does a lot of sync stuff. And you find really interesting things in those writing sessions, and everyone comes from different angles, which is loads of fun. I get to learn a lot whenever I work with somebody new. Everyone's got really amazing insights and approaches. Some people write exactly like me, and those sessions can be really interesting. And then some people are completely opposite to me, and we sit for the first 20 minutes just trying to figure out how to communicate musically. But they're both kind of fun. So that process is a bit of a diluted kind of answer, as I come at it from both ways. So I love the singer-songwriter thing, but I do like to have people shake me up and shake me out of my comfort zones.
Yeah, and are you somebody who likes to kind of write about your own experiences and hope kind of other people draw from them? Or are you somebody who once to think of, the human experience and kind of do it from a bigger picture? Where are you at with things?
I like to write what I know. I think being genuine is pretty important, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to write from your like experiences. Like sometimes I'll sit down and be like, oh, what happens if every time I sit at a bar and a cute girl walks up and complains about the next bad guy that she's been dating, like, why don't I write a song about being a bad guy so that she'll date me? And then come at a song like from that. So sometimes I like situational writing, coming up with ridiculous concepts or ideas and being like, hey, like, let's write a song where, like, what happens if I wanted to get the bar up dancing, or I'm trying to impress a girl, or so sometimes I do that. Other times, especially with the music that's out, I'll sit and write from a feeling or from an experience or from, as you say, like something that I've felt or want to convey personally.
Yeah. You're someone more than most that I've spoken to has done a lot to make sure that you can get into the music industry as far as moving literally continents. So my question to you with that is whether you want to answer it as a positive or as a negative. What's some of the things that surprised you most about the music industry?
I mean, look, I think the thing that never ceases to kind of amaze me is the ability, like, you always think that that in imposter syndrome, I think, is a big one. You always think you don't know something, or you're the worst person in the room, or somebody else knows so much more than you. And then if you really kind of sit down and you can put your kind of ego aside and you communicate with people, you find that everyone's got different strengths. Like, I recorded with some of the most amazing kind of high guns, these session boys, and two of them that couldn't read sheet music, but they didn't need to. And I was panicking that I couldn't convey like the music notes to them, and they were like, "No, cool, just tell us the key. Like, we're good. Tell us." And so their ability, and that didn't stop them doing what they needed to do. So I think for me, like, learning that everyone has a skill set, and you've got to practice as hard as you can and learn new things and try hone different abilities, but essentially, like, just trust that you can bring that to the music when the time's right. So letting all that go and just sitting in something and really collaborating together, which is ultimately, I think, when the really good stuff gets done.
No, I love that. And I don't know exactly. You talked about how in London there's a growing country music scene. I don't know whether that's afforded you the opportunity to perform quite a bit in that area or not. But what do you enjoy more, or are you going to kind of split the middle? Are you somebody who really enjoys getting in there and writing and recording the music? Are you somebody who just loves to kind of get in front of people and perform music, whether it's yours or someone else's? Where's the
Listen, I love being able to write my own songs, and that's a great process and sometimes very stressful. But for me, the real kind of magic moment is when you're standing up on stage and you're performing songs that you've written to people that are really enjoying them. I think there's a moment there that's like the creation from nothing to something is amazing. And and that's not taking away, singing covers and acknowledging kind of those that came before you and finding a spin on these great kind of concepts is amazing too. It's just a different thing. And I'm lucky enough I've got to do that as well. Haven't done as much performing in London in the musical theater in the country scene, because I've been doing a little bit more musical theater stuff. But you've got Country to Country here, which is a huge festival that kind of comes through. You're getting, like, we've got our own kind of CMA now, the UK, the Country Music Association, which is a relatively new thing. So that's great. I'm playing the Green Note in Camden end of November, or middle of November. With a country kind of Nashville in the round kind of concept, which is relatively new to them. I'm playing a festival in Wales next year in May. So there's really, like, it's a growing thing, and festivals here are really big. So getting those country festivals up and going, and they are there, and they're growing rapidly. Like, is wonderful, and I have been lucky enough to be invited to a few of them. But it would be nice to get up there with a bit more of my own stuff and a bit more of my a bigger band and really kind of put four on the floor.
Absolutely. I want to get to your new release that was released on August the 29th, called We Had It Made. What's the inspiration of that song? What's it about? What should people expect?
Well, this is quite a cool one. It's a funny one. It walks the line of kind of folk and country. It wouldn't be your most typical country song, but I wrote it about someone I knew that we cared for each other very much, but we were walking different paths and heading in different directions, and there was like no hard feelings, and it was almost like a very reflective look back on what we had, and kind of acknowledging that, I care for you as a person, I love you as a person. It's time to move on. But when everything lined up and the timeline was right and the moment was right and the people were right, it was really good. And I think sometimes we don't acknowledge that. You always start dating somebody for a reason. You loving someone for a reason. And sometimes when you break up, you try to forget that, or people lose sight of that. And sometimes it just doesn't work, and it's not because you didn't love that person for certain moments. So that's what the song's looking at. It's talking about. It's a very reflective kind of. I call it like a travel song. Something you can play in the car, and you can really like think back about the times you spent with someone special, even if it didn't work out.
Yeah, and I want to kind of get to your, I guess, to your sound. I always like to listen to artists before I read, the bio, and once I listened and then I read, I like something that was sent to me in that bio, and it said Josh Groban gone country, which I think sounds pretty accurate. I like that because you've got a little bit of that. That Groban-esque, I don't know, I don't want to say operatic, but a little bit more to your voice there. So tell us a little bit about I guess how you would describe your own sound.
I mean, that's a very, very accurate and good ear, well picked up. I'm a classically trained singer, so I train classically. So I spend a lot of time singing Groban-esque type stuff. And if you do a deep dive, there's definitely me in a suit singing Groban with an opera with an orchestra behind me. And I really love it, and there's a place for that, and that's just what my voice is. And I really kind of enjoy leaning into that. I kind of like having like a Johnny Cash feel, but like if Johnny Cash sang a little bit more operatically, it's pretty fun. So, yeah, and especially the kind of stuff that we have out really looked at that, and the musical theater feel is there too. There's definitely that influence there, that storytelling. I think some musical theater is great, some is not so great. Some touches on country, some doesn't, but ultimately it's there to tell a story. And if you look at a lot of country, you know and you sing it in a certain way, it can sound very musical theater. But I don't have a very strong American accent, as you can probably tell. So when I sing, it doesn't come across that strongly American, and that's something that. And some people, don't have an American accent at all when they sing. They sound very kind of country and American. And there's that a little bit in sometimes, especially in this new album we're doing. But yeah, I'm African. I'm living in London. So I got to kind of acknowledge that I'm not. I'm an African cowboy. I'm not an American cowboy.
Mhm.
As much as I love America, and I think it's wonderful, and I'd love to, do some cowboying out in America again. So yeah, that's kind of that sound is very much me just trying to be as kind of authentic to where I come from as possible, and it'll change over time, and it'll tweak and it'll play. But you're not wrong. It's got that Josh Groban kind of timbre to it, which I kind of enjoy playing around with a lot.
No, yeah, no, absolutely, for sure. And I would like to ask this question. And I mean, we already talked about well, we didn't really talk about it. You've mentioned a few times your musical theater background, so you've already kind of got that layer to you. But I always like to ask everyone that I talk to that is a musical artist of some sort, what their favorite music is. I've had people on that are almost screamo that they say they listen to that enough when they're recording. They prefer Beethoven when they're not. So I always like to hear kind of that difference when you're listening to music. What are you listening to?
I mean, listen, it's one of those things. If you listen to a song and you don't want to stop listening, that's what I listen to, and then that can be anything from R&B to hip hop to kind of whatever Lainey Wilson is releasing. Or I love Stapleton. I'm a big Stapleton guy. Like I mentioned him, Foy Vance, your Springsteens. I love, I do like Michael Bublé, Josh Groban. They're in the playlist as well. So big band, swing, country, rock, Eminem, anything that's good music and it's real. I try to keep pretty open to. Metallica's got some great stuff. So it'll depend on if I find a song interesting and I listen to it in a different way, and I'm like, oh yeah, the way they play that guitar is amazing. Or I love that kind of the way they put that rhythm section together. Or I love the way that Foy Vance is written those lyrics and that melody and the way that the chords bounce off each other, I'll listen to it. So yeah, anything. I don't like stuff that is almost too reliant on kind of synthy kind of computers and stuff. I respect the art form, and it's very, very difficult, but I'm very much a real instrument guy. Love it. I love the sound of real instruments. And then if the guys know how to play them, even if I don't necessarily like the music and I like the way they play the instrument, I'll listen to it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's I think liking good music is a good thing. So I like that. Of course we kind of want to promote that new song that was just released, but I do like to ask, what's if somebody's going to pull you up on Spotify, what's a few more songs of yours that you're particularly proud of? And you can talk about some of the ones that have gotten the most love, or the other end of things that you're so proud of, but doesn't get a lot of attention. Give us a few more of your songs.
Oh, well, yeah, thanks. There's a song called Listen. Probably should have called it something else because I keep saying, well, listen, and everyone's like, yeah, I'm listening, but it gets kind of lost in translation. But the song called Listen, I'm pretty proud of. I wrote it very, very early in the morning on the farm, and my grandmother's got my great grandmother's piano that she brought in over this on the ships, and it's tucked away there in the farm in the corner. And I sat and I wrote Listen on it, and I wrote it in like 5-10 minutes by myself quietly, and then yeah, it was pretty easy to record that, and I'm pretty proud of the way that came out. There's another song which didn't do that well, which I genuinely love. It's called Coal Train to New York. I'm very proud of it. I think it's a very, very kind of cool song and kind of bounces between country and rock quite nicely. The vocals on it, especially a friend of mine kind of sings the backing vocals, the female partner, and she's amazing. So it sounds great. Shotgun's another one. I actually wrote it years ago, and we kind of held it back, and I tweaked it, and we changed a few things on it, and then released it, and that one's a really fun one as well. So there's a couple out there, and they all kind of tell different stories, and they all have like slightly different voices in them, but I was proud of those ones. I wrote those all by myself, and kind of, like they were real labor of love and development, and you can kind of see, different influences, the piano or the guitar or the kind of gospely vocals on it. So I love all that stuff.
Yeah, and with Spotify and YouTube, it's almost a non-question now, but still got to ask it. People want to check this stuff out. Where are they going to find you?
I mean, Spotify's always a great one. The more you listen, the happier I am. But Instagram's a great way to kind of find me. I've got links to my websites on there. I've got links to my mailing lists. I've got links to any of my Spotify things that you want on there. Any releases will let you know what's coming up, either on the emailing list or on the on Instagram. So that's a great one. I'm on TikTok. I'm not great on TikTok, but I'm working on it. But yeah, Spotify and Instagram would be the best way to find me. If you like the songs, send some love through, share it. I'm always really excited to kind of meet new people and discuss music.
Yeah, well, most people aren't going to see this, but you're sitting at a piano. You've got 5 guitars behind you. So I feel like maybe you're going to release the music you've got now, and you're just going to forget everything else. You're going to stop the music scene, right?
Well,
I think you're literally sitting in it. I feel like music is definitely a big part of your life. So.
Yeah, and I love sitting and learning. I do have a guitar problem. Every guitar's got to sound different and have a name. But yeah, I love guitar, and I love the sound that the different guitars make, and the skill that goes into making a wooden instrument. I'm very grateful to have a decent kind of keyboard that I kind of bang on and get a couple of ideas out, and really kind of I find it inspiring. That resonator is relatively new, so kind of playing around with that sound, your Robert Johnson, you kind of feel, and there's some really good stuff that came out of that, and yeah, I love having them out and around and picking them up. It drives my housemates and neighbors nuts, but
yeah, well, we'll have to see what comes out of that, and that the sound that you're playing around with. So I really appreciate you joining me. Thanks so much for your time.
thanks for having me, man. It's lovely chatting with you.
So that was Chris Erasmus. Really enjoyed speaking with him. I think if you go check out his music, you're going to hear kind of that unique sound that Josh Groban meets country music. It's definitely a unique thing, and I really enjoy it myself. All the links to him will be in the show notes on how to check out his music, how to follow along with him, all that good stuff. I know that you'll want to check things out. If this is your first time listening and you haven't already, like I said at the beginning, go follow along with us as well. Tons of musical guests in the past, tons of guests from all walks of life in the past, everything from true crime to actors and everything in between. So hope you'll check out some of those past episodes. Hope you'll check out future episodes. The only way to make sure you don't miss them is to follow along. So Not Enough Podcasts on TikTok, on Instagram, Not Enough with Jackson F on Facebook. Go leave that 5-star rating on Apple and Spotify. Leave a written review on both. Helps a ton. But we'll see you next time. Take it away, Chris.
This has been Not in a Huff with Jackson Huff. Thank you for listening. Be sure to join us next time, where we will interview another amazing guest who is sure to make you laugh or make you think. Or, hey, maybe even both. But until then, keep being awesome.